All right, so to practice, you're going to find this homework out on my math lab, and you are allowed unlimited attempts per question, pretty much, unless it's multiple choice, because that's just wrong. All right, so we've already covered how to look at this one, and we've already covered this one and this one and this one, because they're just like basic, is it a function, is it not a function? So we're going to start with number 5, just because it's exciting. So it says to find the domain of the function. So what is our issue? And ignore everything up here. I have f of x equals the square root of 7 minus x. So just like we discussed in the intro video, I can assume that my domain is all real numbers unless I see variables in denominators or I see an even root. So what we don't want to do is generate negatives underneath the even root, because, for instance, the square root of -4 can't happen because a square root is defined as something times itself. And so, for instance, the square root of 9 is 3 because 3 times itself is 9. So what are you going to multiply times itself to get a -4? If I do -2 times -2, I get +4. If I get +2, I get +4. So there's no number times itself that will give me an answer of -4. So I need to avoid generating negatives under here. So what I'm going to do is this. We're going to take the argument, which simply means the stuff underneath the radical, and what we are going to do is constantly, this is your strategy, this is your format, say I need to be bigger than 0, because that's what all of the numbers, positive numbers are bigger than 0. But I can also equal 0, because it's the square root of 0 is 0. Okay, so that's your strategy. Take what's under here, take the argument and say you are bigger than or equal to 0, and now we're just going to solve. Okay, so if I add x to both sides, that gives me 7 is the biggest thing that x can be. Well, that's not what we're used to seeing. We're used to seeing x's on the left. So if 7 is the biggest that x can be, that means that x must be smaller than 7. So I just flipped everything. Okay, all I did was flip everything. Now, do what we did before, and we want to graph it. So there's 7. That means I'm going to take everything to the left of 7. But 7 is going to have a closed circle, and you always want to check just to make sure you flipped everything properly. So what's a number to the left of 7? Let's try 2. So what is 7 minus 2? Is it positive? Then it's fine. Okay, so 7 minus 2 is 5. The square root of 5, I can throw that in my calculator and it won't scream at me. So where does my answer start? My answer starts to the left, which would be -infinity. And then my answer is going to end at 7, and he's going to get a hard bracket. Okay, so that is what you're going to be looking for on this one, is going to be from -infinity to 7. Okay, so just work it out very slowly, very surely. All right, which means you can do, okay, so you can do these ones already, because I can shove in a 3. So all this means is I have a function, and instead of an x, I'm going to put a 3. So we'll do the first one. So that means I've got the square root of 19 minus 3. Well, what is 19 minus 3? 19 minus 3 is 16. Do I know what the square root of 16 is? I do. It's 4. So if I shove in a 3, which is my x-coordinate, I get a 4, which is my y-coordinate. So the point 3, 4 is on that graph. So then you can do a -1. So 19 minus -1 turns into 19 plus 1, okay? And so that's going to give you the square root of 20. And you should probably remember how to simplify radicals. So this is going to be the same thing as 4 times 5. You happen to know what the square root of 4 is. It is 2. So the square root of 4 is going to change to a 2. And then I'm left with the square root of 5. So you're looking at that as the square root of 4. times the square root of 5, okay? I know what the square root of 4 is, it's 2. And then you can do 17/4, negative 7, 7. I've got this set up to accept unsimplified answers as correct because later on things get kind of sticky. And so you should be able to enter that as the square root of 20 and it should be just fine, theoretically. All right, so here we go. This is absolute values, which means I can shove anything in there. It's just when I'm done simplifying, when it comes out, it's got to go positive. Absolute value simply means distance from 0. So absolute value represents distance, and distance is never negative. Distance is never negative. So if I shove in an 8, what is 8 squared? It's 64 minus 8 plus 2. So 64 minus 8 is, I get 56, plus 2 is 58. What is the absolute value of 58? How far is 58 from 0? It is 58 units, okay? If I generated a negative 58 here, it would have changed to a positive. Don't just flip the sign, okay? So you can do that one, and then we're going to go on. All right, so now we've got domain again. All right, so I want the domain of this function. So what do we know? I'm going to assume that the domain is all real numbers unless I see an even radical or an even root, which we did a while ago, or I see variables in denominators. So remember, I never want my denominator to equal 0 because I can't divide by 0. So now your strategy is, what will make it be 0 so that I know what to avoid? So I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. So if x equals negative 2, that means what is negative 2 plus 2 is 0. So 5 over 0 is undefined. So here's what I'm going to do. If x is 0, or sorry, if x is negative 2, that means I can use everything but negative 2. Everything over there is okay, and everything over here is okay. So how do I write this? I'm going to start in negative infinity and go all the way to negative 2, but then I got to stop. So these both get soft brackets. Then I'm going to pick back up at negative 2 with a soft bracket, meaning don't use it, get awfully close to it, but don't touch it, and go to positive infinity. And so now you've got your answers here. So it's going to be either this chunk or it's going to be that chunk. Anything in here or in here works, okay? So I will say or. All right, this one is very tricky because I've got even roots and I have variables and denominators. So let's do the variables and denominators first. I need to factor this. Okay, I've got to factor this. So I need two numbers that multiply to negative 35 that add up to negative 2. So when I look at that, that's going to become an x minus 7, x plus 5. Okay, and then what I have up here is the square root of x plus 5. So here's what I know. Let's just take this a piece at a time. I know that I can't use a 7 because 7 minus 7 is 0, and 0 times that mess will be 0. So 7 is off limits, okay? So right now here is where's 7? All right, here's 7. 7 is off limits. Don't touch him, so he's an open circle. What about this one? If negative 5 plus 5 is 0, okay? So negative 5 is also off limits, okay? Now I've handled the denominator, so now I got to handle the numerator. So how do I handle the stuff underneath the radical? What I do with that is I take the argument and I say as long as you are greater than or equal to 0, everything is fine, okay? So I'm going to subtract 5, and now that says everything that's bigger than negative 5 or equal to. So there's nothing over here. This stuff is off limits. This is no, do not go there, okay? So I can't use negative 6, I can't use negative 7, I can't use negative 8, anything like that. This portion says that I can use -5 because x is bigger than or equal to, but this said I couldn't. And so I have to go with the one that will keep me safe. So I'm just not going to use -5, but I can use everything else. Okay, how do I write this? That means nothing over here is going to work. Okay, and I got that from this portion. This will not work, and this will not work. I got that from these. But all of this will, and all of this will. So how do I write my answer? My answer is going to start at -5, and I'm going to keep on going until I hit 7. I have to use soft brackets on both, and then I'm going to do it again. You can use the little union symbol. It looks like a U, and when you start typing this in, it'll pop up for you to use. That means and or. Okay, it means both of it. Now where do I start back up again? I'm going to hop on the other side of 7 and go all the way, go all the way to positive infinity. So just be very, very careful, because this is like the worst scenario ever. So do your denominator first and find out what is positively untouchable. I cannot use -5, cannot use 7. And then use your numerator since there's an even root there, okay? So now you can do number 8, and you can do, well, let's look at 11, because 11 is kind of exciting. And this is going to be how we start the next section, but we're going to look at it now. So this video is going to run, I'm going to have to do a third video on them. All right, this is called a piecewise function. So it's piecewise, which simply means I've got pieces of functions. So what we usually do is we look over here first, okay? So this says I'm a function, then I've got a curly bracket, and he looks like 3 different things. So what I'm going to do is draw this picture. So I have flip. We'll be able to set this up, and then I'll have to go to the next video. All right, so I've got f of x equals, and then I've got a -5x plus 12. So we know that that makes a line. If x is less than or equal to -4. He looks like a 4 if x is between -4 and 4. And then he looks like another line if x is bigger than or equal to 4. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to look at this stuff first. Okay, you can't see. Okay, we're going to look at this stuff first. So here is my coordinate plane, okay? And I know that if x is less than -4, that means something. So I'm going to come over here, and this is just a little guide to help me decide what's going on, okay? So that's if x is less than or equal to -4. What does this say? X is going to be between -4 and +4, so that means I've got another boundary, okay? So the -4 is still there, and now I've got +4. And this says if x is bigger than or equal to 4. So now I'm over here. So I made 3 different areas, which makes sense because I got 3 different equations going on. So what am I going to do? This one up here, if x is less than or equal to -4, that is a line that has a negative slope. So I'm just going to draw the roughest sketch ever, okay? So he's a line with a negative slope. I don't care about any points. I don't care about anything. But what happens when it hits the -4? He gets the -4, so he gets a filled in circle, okay? What do I look like between -4 and 4? Well, if y equals 4, that's a horizontal line that slices through the y-axis at 4, okay? So he looks like a 4 between -4 and 4. So what does he have at -4? He has an open circle. What does he have at +4? He has an open circle. And then he has a positive line over here, and he gets to own the 4, so he has a closed circle there. And that's where we're going to pick up on the next video.